It is totally okay to say, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. I know how to say this in my native language. I just want to make sure I get it right in English. It's okay to say I'm nervous. Like that
Sure.
actually injects some humanity into the interview, right? And so that gives you a little bit of grace.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Frustrated to Fluent. This is the podcast where we help non native English speakers in healthcare gain the skills they need so that way they can thrive in their careers. And today I'm talking with Emily Worden. She is amazing. She's a certified professional career coach helping driven job seekers get hired, get paid, and get more confident in their personal and professional lives. She helps mid career professionals with career transitions whether they want to move into a new industry, or return to work after a career pause. Emily created a proven 5-step method to help people find jobs they love for more money than they were expecting. So the typical client of hers receives a job offer within 3 months with a 20% pay increase. So that is amazing. Emily, welcome. Thank you for being
Thanks.
here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to help your audience today.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm so excited to talk to you because, as someone who has worked with a lot of non native English speakers in healthcare, the job process or the interviewing process can be a really big issue because of the language barrier or even a cultural barrier or some biases that they may feel. So I'm really glad that you are here to give expert advice on the job process because a lot of things have changed. We've talked about that, so thanks again for being here. I'm really excited about this conversation with you.
Thanks for having me, Devon.
Yes, no problem. All right, so let's get straight to it. We've talked before about how a lot of people think that the job process is just going on Indeed or like a website, and then you just fill out your application and that's it. Well, I know that you said that those times are completely done. And one of the things that a lot of job seekers need now is personal branding. That's the first thing I want to ask you. What role does personal branding play in a job search? And how can non native speakers create an authentic yet compelling brand, even if they're concerned about their fluency level?
Oh, that's such a good question. I am so deeply passionate about personal branding. I have been spouting the benefits of personal branding for years, but in this super competitive job market, it's more important than ever before. And I hate to give job seekers another thing to worry about or another thing to do, but the great thing about personal branding is once you dial that in, it doesn't just help you get the next job, it helps you with your overall career development because you become known as that go to person for whatever you're building your brand for. So it's not
Mhm.
just, okay, great, it's going to help me get this job. It's going to help you get the next one and the next one, or get you the promotion if you're staying at the job. So, personal branding at the heart of it is, I like to say, you already have a brand and it's your reputation. So, whenever someone thinks of your name, what they think of you, whatever words come up, that's your brand. So, you can let other people be in control of it, or you could be in control of it yourself. And your personal brand can come out in the way you talk, in the way you interact with others, your expertise, the way you present yourself on LinkedIn, how you talk about your resume. So, from a job seeker's perspective, when I work with my clients and I have them work on their personal brand, I have a 5-step process to help people with their job search. And step one is figuring out what you want. What kind of career is important to you? Step two is figuring out who are your target employers and what do they want, right? So, where do you want to work? What are their job titles? What kind of employee are they looking for? That leads into step three, your personal brand. So a lot of times people go, I don't know what my brand is. I don't know how to define it. I don't know what to put on my resume. I don't know how to talk about my background. It's all informed by step two, by studying your employers. So once you know what you want and what they want, that translates into step three, your personal brand. And when I say your personal brand, it's how you talk about your career history in a way that's compelling to your target employers and how that's reflected in your resume and in your LinkedIn. So when I often hear people struggling saying, I don't know how to present myself, I don't know how to talk about my background, it's all in the job descriptions. So the very first thing I do when I work with my clients, when we're working on their personal brand, their resume, their LinkedIn, very first thing we do is I say, find 2 to 3 jobs that sound interesting to you. And if you are looking at different job titles or different industries, then find 2 to 3 per job title. But find 2 to 3 jobs that sound interesting to you. Copy and paste them, put them in a new document. And you go through that document and you highlight all the keywords and all the key phrases about the kind of person they're looking for, the kind of skills they need, the kind of results that they want, right? So you take all of those highlighted keywords and key phrases, you put them into a new document, and you start kind of organizing them by themes. And what you find is what I call your pillar themes. These are the pillars on which you base your personal brand. So let's say, for example, leadership is really important. You're seeing leadership again and again, right? Or someone who's great at communicating. That becomes a pillar for your brand. And that's something that you start emphasizing in your resume and on your LinkedIn and during job interviews. So to sum up, my advice for people who are struggling with their personal brand, go right to the source, go right to the job descriptions. Let's say there's a job you really want in a certain industry or healthcare company or anything like that. Go study the LinkedIn profiles of the people who have that job already. And how are they presenting themselves? What skills are they highlighting? What's their career history? How did they get there? All of that information can also inform your personal brand. Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's fantastic information because a lot of people in healthcare, they're not necessarily business owners. They work
Mm,
at hospitals or clinics or research facilities or a university. And so a lot of people probably don't realize that they need a personal brand, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm grateful that you talked about that because yes, everybody has a personal brand, especially in healthcare, which leads to my second question because this is something that a lot of people deal with. And I'm grateful to ask you this question because I recently heard about this. I went to my son's friend's birthday party and I met someone there who works with like a recruiting company and they place doctors in facilities. And so she's a part of the interviewing process. And when I told her about what I do in my academy, and she thought that was amazing and it was greatly needed because she told me that sometimes the deal breaker for some of these doctors being placed is their ability to communicate as non native speakers. That
Mm,
is literally the only thing. And so
mm,
a lot of non native English speakers know this when they go into these types of spaces. And so it causes a great deal of anxiety. And then let's be honest, they're looked down upon because they are non-native English speakers. Not
mm,
all the time, but enough where that is an issue. So
yeah.
for you, who is an expert in this, how can job seekers handle subtle biases or concerns about their English fluency while still leaving a positive impression on potential employers in the healthcare realm?
Oh, that's a great question. That question brings out such empathy for me because, native speakers are terrified of interviews, right? It's already a very
Hmm.
nerve-wracking experience. So having that worry about, can I communicate clearly? Can I present myself clearly? Am I getting my thoughts around? I'm going to give you the same advice that I give native job seekers in that here's the secret sauce to getting a job. It's not about you. It's about what you can do for them. This kind of goes back to the advice I just gave. When you go back and look at your target employers or the places you want to work, and you think about what are their pain points? What are their problems, their wants, and their needs? And how can I help them solve that? So let's say if it's in the healthcare realm and they want someone who has, great bedside manner, or someone who can communicate easily with the patients, or someone who's willing to take that extra time to make people feel seen and heard. What are the qualities that that employer is looking for? That's what you're going to emphasize. And if you don't speak English perfectly, but you can say to someone, look, I got you. I understand your problem, wants, and needs. I understand your pain points. I understand who you're looking for this position. And this is how I can help you with that. You're already going to be ranking much higher in the, potential candidate pool than someone who speaks absolutely perfect English and they're not answering those questions. They're not speaking. They're saying, this is me. This is what I'm about. This is my background. I say this all the time in the job search. You're not special. It's not about you. It's about what you can do for them, right? And so I don't care about your background. I care about what your background can do for me, the employer, right? So I understand that nerves, oh my gosh, what if my English gets in the way? That's irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. What's relevant is how you're going to nail that job and how you're going to give them exactly what they need in terms of, again, their problems and wants and needs. So, going back to the job description, studying the keywords, understanding what's important to them. One of the key phrases that I love to say, I tell people to use in job interviews, in cover letters, in their job applications. You're looking for someone who can do XYZ. I've done it before. Here's how. And here's why I'd be a great member of your team. If you can answer that, again, you're putting yourself leagues above the average interviewer. I don't care what your English language skills are. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's fantastic because they know that there could be some implicit bias simply by their accent or their culture, depending on where they live. You're saying if they can focus on how they solve problems, that transcends pretty much everything, which makes so much sense. So thank you for touching on that. That's actually very helpful.
I like to do the metaphor that job seekers are like bottles of conditioner. So imagine yourself, what I like to say the metaphor is job seekers are in a box on a shelf among all of the other job seekers. What do you put on that box to help you stand out, to help someone pick you up and
Mm.
say, ooh, Devon can solve my problem wants and needs. I want to, hire her, right? So this is why I say you're like job seekers are like bottles of conditioner. When you're at the store and you're looking at all of the bottles and there's so many options and it's so overwhelming, you pick up the label, you look at it. What is it promising you that it can do? Can it help with dry hair or curly hair or colored hair or whatever it is? That's your problem that you're trying to solve. So whatever bottle is saying, hey, I got you, you got dry hair, I'm going to give you full moisture, that's going in the shopping cart. So it's the same exact thing with the job search. It's the same thing. It's like if I can speak to you solving your problem, I'm telling you guys, anyone who's listening, I talk to thousands of job seekers a year. 99% of them are not approaching the job search this way. So if you approach the job search this way, it's guaranteed giving you that extra edge over anyone else.
Awesome. I love it. Now, I know that you said job searching is so different now. And one of the things that you do talk about in your LinkedIn content is networking. And networking can be a really big concern for non-native speakers because they're so worried about how they're going to come across. So obviously networking can be intimidating for anyone, but like I said, even more so for non-native speakers. So what strategies can help them confidently connect with professionals in the healthcare industry? Since that is
Oh,
a part of the job search now.
it's a huge part of the job search now. I talked earlier in the interview about my 5-step process, and I went through steps 1 through 3. Step 4 is networking. By the way, step 5 is the job search. But step 4 is networking because once you get your personal brand nice and tight in your resume and your LinkedIn, what I say all the time, job search is not a numbers game, meaning it's not about how many applications you apply to. It's not a numbers game. It's a referral and a recruiter game. And the way you do that is by networking. Now, here's the deal with networking. First of all, ChatGPT can be your best friend if you're worried about how to pronounce things the right way, right? I don't recommend you copy and pasting everything from ChatGPT into it because AI written stuff, at least for me, I can spot it a mile away and it really irritates me. I try to give grace if I know the person's a non-native English speaker because I'm like, okay, they're using it to help them, but take it and then put your little personal spin on it. So that can just help you with the initial written message. But what I want to say about networking in general, it's a long game. So good networking is all about offering help and asking for help. So I get messages all day long from people who think I'm a recruiter and asking if I can help them with their job search. And they say, hey, Emily, I'm looking for a job in the healthcare field. Can you help me? That does nothing for me. It's
Right.
it's 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 what's been happening when I've been a career coach for 8 years. One of the things I noticed, people back in the day were a lot more willing. Hey, Devin, can I have 15 minutes to talk with you? Sure. People were a lot more willing to do that back in the day. They're not now. And we're all busy. We're all hit with messages all day long. So I get it. I understand. So when you write someone and you're not providing complete information, or you're asking for something right off the bat when they don't know you, that's how not to network. Okay. So when I say when you're doing your network, like if I'm working with my clients and they're looking for a job and we talk about networking, I say it's a long-term game. I always recommend in your job search that you find target employers. You find places where you want to work and then you network your way to a job in. I find that much easier than hitting the job boards all day long and applying with the thousands of other people and hope your application gets seen. So let's say that you have a list of like a top 10 places where you'd really like to work. What I tell people to do, go on LinkedIn, search for people who work at those companies. Ideally, you try to find recruiters or hiring managers. The hiring managers are going to be the heads of the department that you want to work for, but also just people in the department you want to work for. Look at their profiles. Now, ideally, they're people who are active on LinkedIn. They've posted more than once a year. The first thing you do, just follow them. That's it. Then you start engaging with their posts and you like and you comment. Then what I recommend you do, you can always see someone's activity. There's a little button that says see their activity. You go and click on their activity. You see where they're leaving comments on other posts. Go on those other posts and leave comments on their comments. So they start seeing your name in multiple places. You're following them, you're commenting on their feed, you're commenting on other feed. Get to know them a little bit. Then you can send them a connection request. And the connection request is, I've been following your posts. I like what you said about this. I thought this was interesting. Get specific about it, right? Because people want to feel special. They don't feel like they're getting mass message. So you want to write that nice custom message. And the line I like to use is hoping to connect so I'll see more of your work in my feed, or more of your posts in my feed or something like that. At that point, you've now warmed up the person. They know you're not just mass spamming them, right? So you've got that connection request. Now you guys can message back and forth. So the next follow-up message is I like to do, hey, I see you're working at ABC Hospital. I would love to work there one day. How do you like it? Do you have any recommendations on the application process? Do you have any insights about hiring or how did you get the job there? So you're not saying, can you help me get a job? It's, hey, do you have any, insight about what it's like to work there? So you get that conversation going. They get to know you because I get people all the time saying like, can you recommend me for a job? No, I don't know you. I can't recommend you for a job. But you start building that relationship with me. Yeah, okay. And again, going back to this 99% of people aren't doing this. Guys, I get messaged all day long and I can tell you with confidence, 99% of people don't do this. So the ones who take the time to follow me and interact with me and customize their messages and tell me what they like about my content, I'm much more likely to work with them or help them than just someone randomly mass messaging me out of the blue saying, hey, can you help me get a job? So that's what I mean by it being a long game. Now, if you already have a network and you're trying to tap back into that network, I always say you want to offer help. And people say, okay, well, how do I offer help? You could say, hey, I'm on the job hunt. I'm looking to do XYZ. If you hear of anything, let me know. And if there's any way I can use my network to help you, please let me know. Or I tell people, stay in touch with your network regularly, every 3 to 6 months, and you send them an article of interest. You say, hey, I saw your company was listed in the news. I thought you might find this interesting. Or I know you really like tea. I saw this article about tea and I thought you might like it. Those are even simple little ways of offering help that is that personal connection that really makes a difference with networking today. Because those cold calling messages, can I have 15 minutes of your time? They just don't work anymore.
Yeah, that's so true. And we're all getting spammed with those on LinkedIn. We are all getting spammed with those.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so now I want to ask you about an issue that is a big thing for non-native speakers, and that is during the interviewing process, they might get asked a question that they may not know how to necessarily answer in English, and that can cause a great deal of anxiety. So, for someone who is in the interview and they're doing it in English, or someone who is anxious about answering unexpected questions due to language limitations, what preparation techniques can help them stay calm and confident under pressure?
Oh, that's a good question. First of all, you're talking with another human. It is totally okay to say, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. I know how to say this in my native language. I just want to make sure I get it right in English. It's okay to say I'm nervous. Like that
Sure.
actually injects some humanity into the interview, right? And so that gives you a little bit of grace. So I think that is completely okay to say. It's just I just want to make sure I say this properly. That's okay, right? So if you need a few extra minutes, just say that. Overall, I like to say, because even native speakers get really nervous about interviews. I find that they get really nervous is when they put too much pressure on themselves. When they're like, I have to nail this. This is my dream job, or I haven't had an interview in 3 months. I have to get this right. And they put all of these pressures on themselves. I like to say, go into the interview. It's a conversation. That's all it is. And the conversation is you are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. So you are also figuring out, do I want to work there? Is this a culture I like? Is this a potential manager I want to work for? Right. So, first of all, seeing it as more of a conversation, even level playing field. That's a good way to first and go about it. I also like to remind people you got the interview because you have the skills. Someone has read your resume and said, you know what? Devon has the skills we're looking for. Let me bring her in for an interview. You wouldn't be there if they didn't think you could not do the job. So you are a qualified applicant already walking in the door. They are interested in you, right? So think of it as a conversation. You have the skills, right? You're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. But if you're ever in the interview and you need a moment, it's okay to say, sorry, I'm just processing. I just want to make sure I say this right. That's fine. But you can also do this trick, what I like to call the interview pivot. What you do with the interview pivot is, so let's say it's for a leadership position and they say, can you tell me about a time when you led a team and there was a conflict? How did you handle it? So you tell your story. And then at the end of it, you do the interview pivot. You say, how about you? Have there been any issues on this team where there was a conflict and how did you handle it? Now,
Ooh.
I like to do, yeah, thank you. I came up with this a few years ago and it's been beautiful. I like the interview pivot for a few reasons. First of all, it gives your brain a break. They're now answering the question. You don't feel like you're on the spot the whole time. So it's like, okay, I can breathe for a second. Second of all, put yourself in the interviewer's shoes. They're often interviewing people for hours at a time. They're bored. They're asking the same questions again and again. They're not highly engaged in the process because people often think interviews are a one-way thing, right? I'm going to ask you the questions, you're going to answer. So when you ask them a question, it engages them back into the process. It brings them back into the fold. Side note, people love the sound of their own name. So whenever you can inject their name into the conversation as well, like, how about you, Devon? Has your team struggled with this, right? It snaps people back to attention. So the first reason I like it is it gives your brain a break. The second reason is it gets the other person involved. The third reason I like it is you can start asking questions that reveal the kind of employee they're looking for, right? So like one of my favorite questions that I like to ask during interviews is, what does success look like on this role? Or think of someone who was very successful in this role before. What kind of qualities did they have? Or what are you hoping that the person who takes over this role, the kind of qualities they have or what they're going to do? You ask those questions. We're going back to your first question, pain points. When you ask those questions, you're unveiling their pain points, right? They're telling you what they want in their ideal employee. So you know those exact qualities that you can then turn around and emphasize in your other questions. So the one thing I want to say about the interview pivot, you can do this. I recommend even up to every other question. I wouldn't do this every single question, right? But they ask a question, you do the interview pivot, then let them ask another question, you answer. Then they ask another question, do the interview pivot. Then it's getting much more of that conversational tone. So that's a fun thing to practice. I highly recommend people do that. And Devon, if I may, the last thing I want to say about answering interview questions.
Hmm.
Many people have heard of the STAR format. If you haven't heard of it, it's a very common way, at least in the United States, of answering interview questions. And it stands for situation, task, action, result. So that's the general format that you use when you're answering an interview question. Typically, I don't like to do things typically. This is what I recommend my clients do. First of all, you have those stories in advance, right? You know how to tell those stories. What's your greatest weakness, your strength? Tell me about something, something you were proud of at work, those typical interview questions. I tell my clients to try to answer every question in 2 minutes or less, unless it's a technical interview, but pretty much 2 minutes or less. So you take situation, task, action, result. Drop the task entirely. Now you just have situation, action, result. List the result first. It's like listing your punchline first.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, can you tell me about a time that you made a mistake at work? Let me tell you about the time I almost cost our company $10,000 in printing costs. Don't worry, I solved it. That's your punchline. You lead with that
Yeah.
and it grabs people's attention. Then you can talk about the situation and the action that you did to get that result, right? So that's
Love
just a little
it.
bonus thing I want to mention to people. But if you can practice telling those stories, leading with the result, and then going to situation and action, it's also going to make you feel much more confident and prepared for interviews.
Ooh, I love it. Those are amazing tips, Emily. Thank you. So, as we wrap up, do you have any final words for our non-native English speakers in healthcare who might be looking for jobs or trying to get their dream career?
Oh my gosh. First of all, get out of your own head. You are amazing. I have to tell you, I talk with native speakers all day long who are suffering deeply from imposter syndrome. We all feel that way. So I want you, if you're like, oh gosh, I know I'm amazing for this job, but I'm worried about my English skills. First of all, people feel that way when they have perfect English or they're completely native speakers. Or if you're like me, I only speak one language. I give anyone who speaks multiple languages a ton of credit and a lot of kudos to you, giving you your flowers for putting yourself out there and trying to. I could never do what you guys do. Never. So I want you to recognize how incredible you are that you can do this in the first place. And then I also want you to recognize that imposter syndrome that you feel, everyone feels it. So just tell yourself, like, this is extremely common. It's okay. And then that third piece of advice, I'm going to reiterate, it's okay to say, sorry, I'm nervous. I want to make sure I say this perfectly. So I'm just practicing this in my head. That is completely okay. We like when people show that human side. We don't expect people to be 100% perfect robots. Okay. So you are amazing and you got this and you have my full and utter and complete respect.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Emily.
Sure.
So where can people find you?
Oh,
How can
hey.
people reach out to
Um,
you?
You can check out my website, which is emilywarden.com. That's EMILYWORDEN. But really, you guys, I am dropping truth bombs all day long on LinkedIn. So if you also find me on LinkedIn, I post every day. I like to post really actionable, specific job search advice. I'm not about platitudes. I'm about telling you this is how to get your job ABC. So go to my website. You can sign up for my newsletter on my website, but I also recommend checking me out on LinkedIn because I've got a ton of advice going on there. Go back and read my post history. I have a LinkedIn newsletter as well. So hopefully I'll see you guys there. Feel free to send a message to me. Tell me that you heard me on the podcast. Let's start building that network, right?
Yes, I love to hear it. And yes, I strongly recommend following Emily on LinkedIn. She has incredible content, which is
Oh,
why she's grown almost 30,000 followers in 1 year. So she knows what she's doing. Thank you so much, Emily. This was really educational, and I know this is going to help a lot of people. So thank you for coming on today.
thanks, Devin. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time. See you later. Bye.